Go.
Hello, everybody. Hopefully this is transmitting. Welcome again to the Iron Circus Geek Show, episode 5, and we're doing another special guest thing. Today we have a friend of the Geek Show, a friend of Iron Circus, and a friend to everyone everywhere in general, Evan Dom.
Hi.
We didn't say our names.
Oh, good point. Let's do it formally then. Hi, I'm Spike.
I'm Kel.
I'm Amanda.
I'm Evan.
Fuck, I was drinking my coffee.
It's for comedic effect.
The thing is, I knew you were going to do it, too, and it still made me choke.
Perfect.
Oh, let me turn off my little evaporative air cooler thing.
Oh, and Evan, I want to be the first to compliment your little flappy mouth avatar. You're welcome to being a PNG.
Thank you.
PNG tuber.
Technically, he's a GIF tuber. If you'll notice.
GIF tuber. Oh, yeah.
If you'll notice, it's animated when he's not talking.
Oh,
see, it blinks.
Okay.
And it's technically.
Can you see my? Can you see my Goku Super Saiyan T-shirt?
I was about to comment on how beautifully dressed you were.
This made me very jealous. Now I want to be GIF tubers.
And now I'll never be able to picture you any other way but this.
That's fine with me.
Little bird creature, a little Goku shirt. So, just in case folks here are not familiar, which I find hard to believe, can you please tell everyone about like the body of work that you do?
Yeah, since 2006, I've been doing comics, most of which have been really enormous, like fantasy adventure stuff that I have self-published online and in print. Starting with Rice Boy in 2006, and then Order of Tales, and I have been making this this big anthropological fantasy graphic novel called Vatu since 2010, and it's ending in September. So that's
holy shit.
Yeah,
that's the big thing. But I've also done a trilogy of middle grade books for first, second books, and I've done the Harrowing of Hell for Iron Circus, and I'm very nearly done drawing the next book for Iron Circus. So I'm currently only working on 2 things at once. But generally, I'm trying to navigate doing big, overcommitted fantasy stuff in a way that's like sustainable and that I have control of what I'm doing. That's the emergent trajectory.
I always love to do. I'm following your lead on big, giant fantasy stuff.
Someone in the chat says the other I don't know how to say that. They said, I thought you were French when I first read Rice Boy, as the style looked French to me.
I can see that.
So you said you were working on Vatu since 2010. Like, how long have you been in comics in general?
I mean, Rice Boy was the first thing that I started that I was like taking seriously, and I was 18 in 2006 when I started that. Wow. Before that, I had I've always been very into drawing. I had been doing little comics here and there. I did a lot of things on the competitive comics drawing site entervoid.com. In like high school, that was kind of where I learned a lot of a lot of how it's done and the culture, I guess. But I started Rice Boy with like kind of just wanting to make some story in a visual medium, and it was the one that was handy and I could draw well enough. But I have become more and more sort of attached to the medium as such since then, and that's sometimes a depressing or difficult place to be in, but that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I can absolutely sympathize. Evan is one of those long haulers when it comes to webcomics, people who've been in the scene for a very long time, back when it was something that people told you would destroy your career and prevent people from taking you seriously as an artist when you put your comics on the internet. Man, like some kind of rube.
I was really lucky because I entered because when I entered webcomics, like, I never had to endure that because, like, I didn't know comics people previously, so I never had anyone to be contrary about it.
Oh yeah,
I got a little of that. And the funny thing is that it became so normal, and the like the periodical mode of publication became so obsolete so fast, but we were never apologized to for that,
God,
you know?
no. God, no, not at all. I still remember the arguments where people would talk about how, oh, well, you'll see when you grow up and you're actually all jealous.
I think it's also like the people making that argument were
jerks.
Yeah, they were jerks, but
they were jerks, but also like they didn't make story comics, they just did strips, and like that's a completely different animal. So I feel like they weren't ever actually talking to us. They were talking to
the image
people that made the comic strip web comics.
Yeah. I think there's something to that. Or like people that, if not strips, people that were extremely married to like one publishing format, like people who were, success in the industry is making the monthly, like the monthly full color, like, what do you call it? Assembly line comic or whatever.
Yeah, where you are responsible for one aspect of the book, the pencils or the colors or the inks or whatever. And while it was weighted in the argument that webcomics are inherently and impossibly unprofessional was primarily made by newspaper types, Kel, that is true. I remember, no names, obviously. I remember one of the very loudest.
Names.
Never. God, he could use the publicity, but no names. One of the very, very loudest was someone who actually had a serious small press pedigree, I guess you could say. That he was one of les enfants terribles, or whatever they say. What
was those noises you just said?
It means terrible baby.
Yeah, okay. Which is incredibly well suited to who this person.
Oh, was it French?
Was. It is. It's a French term.
It caught up to me slowly.
But they would make huge, loud arguments about how stupid it was to put comics on the internet, and of course, these days they put comics on the internet. And I remember they were also, of course, very anti-Kickstarter when Kickstarter first emerged, and then they ran Kickstarters because of course they did. But just the arguments that I would witness, I was very rarely a part of it. I was very much sort of spectating. The arguments I would witness they kind of smacked of fear. They smacked of, I have spent 40 years carving out my niche in this particular way. I have climbed this mountain with my improvised rope and my handmade ice axe, and I am almost a quarter of the way from the top, and I looked over my shoulder and you have installed stairs, and that enrages me. You are not allowed to use this. That's what it felt like to me.
Yeah. There is a fear to it, I think, absolutely, because I feel an aspect of that fear.
Now I know what Kel was talking about. Ignore me.
I've been in part of like trying to wrap my head around how to keep doing this after that too. I've been like obsessed with trying to understand sort of prior models of self-publishing in particular, and how there's these sort of windows of opportunity in the industry that open up, and then some chunk of people doing work that may not even be particularly good will achieve some stability in that window, and then that window will close because that probably happens everywhere, but it's a particularly volatile and cheap and fast-moving medium. So there is like a fear because I feel like there hasn't been that long of a period in the history of comics for there to be like a clear, like transmissible career trajectory. So what do you have but just to hold on tightly to your way of doing it and tell everybody that's the only way to do it? And like, because I feel that panic too, because like I'm doing a kind of outmoded mode of publishing.
Fix the title, Kel.
And actually, see, that's fascinating, going back to what Kel was saying before too, talking about how a lot of the loudmouths were newspaper people, and Evan, you were just talking about how oh, a lot of this has to do with, how quickly comics changes. In my opinion, the most ossified and like established part of comics, with a capital C, hewn in stone in an arch over the door, is the newspaper strip, where you have
Yeah.
these comics that are literally celebrating their 80th anniversary and are now being not drawn, not written, but managed by the creator's grandchild, whose job consists of hiring the ghostwriter, hiring the ghost artist, and then golfing 4 days a week.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the most formalized comics has ever gotten. And I could see,
Man, I can't wait for my grandkids to manage my porn.
and it's like I can see feeling this wrenching sort of sweat beads popping out on your forehead fear as newspapers continue to fail and people kind of are not as gravitated to strip comics anymore. But at the same time, I have a hard time feeling sympathy, because I like the analogy I always use when I'm talking to people who, aren't comics degenerates like us, is imagine if you were in TV production. And you imagine if you were in TV production and you went to HBO and you were like, oh, hey, I've got this idea for a show, and here's the idea for the show, and you describe shit. I don't know, what does HBO even do these days?
They do great stuff. But
I'm not aware anymore.
Barry's really good.
I do like Barry.
That decides to be an actor.
I just started that. I love it.
Yeah. NoHo Hank's my favorite.
Let's say you went to HBO with the plot outline and the treatment for Barry, and you're like, I really think this has legs. I really think it'd be good. And HBO just sort of slow blinked at you, and they were all like, look,
Hi, Casey.
I'm sure this is interesting, but we've been playing Howdy Doody since 1962, and people love Howdy Doody.
Yeah.
I don't know what Howdy Doody is. I've heard the title.
It's literally a puppet show for children.
From
is it the cowboy puppet?
The 50s or something.
Yeah, it's like the red-headed, freckle-faced cowboy puppet.
That's a good point. That like that is the institution. I mean, that's the most ossified part of the entire industry, probably in like the Anglosphere at least, and it's also far and away the most creatively dead.
Oh,
like,
absolutely.
Like no question.
Absolutely.
Just coincidentally.
There's Saturday Night Live, and there's shows like that. But
I got the number wrong.
Imagine if you were in any other sort of entertainment sphere and you were in direct, modern, serious competition with something made by somebody who's been dead for 100 fucking years. That's what newspaper strips are.
Yeah.
And again, like I said, they're these incredibly stable sources of income for decades for the families. So I can see being very upset about webcomics, because like us, they live comic-centric lives, and everything sort of rotates around the production of this comic. And the next thing you know, instead of being in, 3,000 papers, suddenly you're in 2,000, and the trend seems to be picking up speed. And when you're looking around wildly, with the tears gathering in the corners of your eyes, you see these idiots on the internet uploading their stick figure comics. And so the more I think about it, the more sense their rage back then made. I didn't have the perspective I do now.
Yeah, I feel that.
They still sounded like dinguses.
Absolutely. It's
100%.
It's a dingus move, but like, I don't know. I'm acutely aware of how it's all kind of moving, and how self-publishing isn't as feasible a thing now as it was 10 or 15 years ago. And like, and how in order to keep doing it, I'm going to like be holding on to some sort of obsolete thing. And I'm feeling the same motivating panic myself, that could make me say things like, these kids doing it this different way now are doing it wrong, when they're automatically going to be more in touch with it,
Well, I think there's a lot of factors at play too. As we talked about it previously, how like the middle grade graphic novel industry is really, really big, and those people are going to grow up. And I think that it's going, like, if all the publishers play their cards right, it's going to be very, very easy to get them to read physical stuff, There's also things like trends come back around, and sometimes people like to disconnect. And like I remember like it was like a trend to be like, I use wired earbuds, and that was like a thing for a while.
I did not know that.
Yeah,
no,
it was a thing where people were like, no, I don't use wireless earbuds. I use wired for various reasons. Blah blah. Long story short, I think stuff like that. Like, I think people miss traditional media and physical media sometimes. Like, especially when you think of like things that disappear off the internet and then like they're just gone.
Yeah.
I think people really appreciate like having their own physical copies of things. So like, yeah, things are pretty digital right now, but I don't think that physical media is ever going to go away. And I think as long as those dang middle schoolers have something to ramp off of and aren't just left in like a sea of nothing when they are adults.
The physical media probably won't die, but like the place for it has dramatically changed. And like I think about, I've been reading through, like I downloaded a torrent of all of the Chris Claremont run of X-Men from like starting in the mid '70s. I love it so far, but it's funny reading this, and I'm thinking a lot about like the place of like the monthly floppy book. It's the bottom of the barrel kind of. Every design decision is the cheapest possible one, and that has informed the entire aesthetic of American comics. Basically, is those cheap, easily reproducible decisions.
I also like Chris Claremont's run on X-Men, but
I love seeing him get into the groove.
But what makes Chris Claremont's X-Men great, in my opinion, monthly comics can't do that anymore. Like Marvel doesn't let people stay on a book that long.
Oh yeah, there's that too. But I mean, like, look at the place that sort of like format fills. It's trying to get something to people as cheaply as possible. You can't make the argument at all now that makes any sense. Like there
is one reason why it makes sense.
Okay.
And this is it comes out so frequently that even when X-Men is mediocre, you remember them. Like, so all the Marvel superheroes, like, as long as the machine of monthly comics keeps happening, they can be as bad as they want, and they'll continue to like have people engage with them because they're coming out that frequently. Whereas I feel like if they came out less frequently in bigger batches, like yearly, I think people might not be as willing to put up with some of the weird, mediocre story decisions that happen in it.
Oh, I do think that is true, but I mean, like, last one train of thought. Oh yeah, but they're not making money on these things, right?
No,
it costs too much.
Not making money.
Not a chance.
It costs too much money to make floppies the way that they're made now, and it just feels like it's just sustaining itself on nostalgia or on like tradition in a way that is just kind of doomed.
Itself by keeping in the like conversation. And that's really what monthly comics are for.
Monthly comics feel like these days more than anything a monetization of the writer's room for film and television.
Yeah,
when y'all say
too.
Monthly, y'all mean once a month, right?
Yeah. Like,
okay.
Yeah. It's almost like, all right, I speak. This sounds.
It's weird that we keep calling them monthly because like I kind of when I bring Love Me Nice, it might be at a monthly schedule. I'm just like calling it like.
That's a great. Sorry, I think that's a great rhythm. I mean, I love the rhythm of it, and I love reading these issues of X-Men and having a sense that like there's a month between. You know, it's a cool. I love the format of it. I just the form factor of like printing an ephemeral little pamphlet just so that you can get it out there as cheaply as possible doesn't make any sense when your stuff could just be put online. You know.
No, here's the thing. It's like everyone talks about, oh, well, the internet, has an incredibly short memory. It really, really does. And I'm sure Evan, Amanda, Kel, you can all get in the same wagon with me on this one and ride, because we all do or have done at some point long form comics on the internet. and we know what it's like to be uploading a page in a sequential story, and maybe a month goes by, and in this sprawling epic we're trying to tell, we've managed to put up, if we've had a really, really good month, 12 pages, and that is a snail's pace of a story. But if I were asked my opinion, I literally cannot think of a better way to do it. I don't think I'll ever be down with the whole, I'm just going to save it all up, and at the end of the month I'm going to post all 12 pages.
Well, that's what I want to do, baby.
And it's like, here's the thing, I think that's worth trying, but if I were asked to predict how I think it would go, I don't think it would go very well.
Well, I don't care, because Love Me Nice has never gone well.
That's fine.
What's the difference?
Fine. You are talking to somebody who is also doing a comic no one reads. Okay, so it's okay, but I wouldn't change the format of how I upload it, which is currently, when I have a minute, I'll put up a page, because the more often I can remind people that thing exists with something they haven't seen before, the better off I am, just in terms of the algorithm and memory retention with the comic. If once a month you go, hey everyone, 12 pages, people will be like, fucking rad. And they'll read those 12 pages, and then they have an incredibly high probability of not thinking about you again.
Yeah, I mean, I
guess, but like... my webcomic finally updated 2 pages after like almost 3 years of not updating, and like the people who like crawled out of the woodworks being like, oh my god, was like very heartwarming. So no, I did something. My printer, shut up, printer.
No, that's great, and nobody's saying that won't happen. It's just Spike's talking about like trying to maximize momentum, I guess. But there's some trade-off around, like, maybe if you could do a whole chunk of pages in a month and it forms a more cohesive and engaging unit of itself, then maybe that can produce momentum of a different sort, than just like a little tiny inconsequent, no disrespect,
like
but
the shorter updates that come more frequently. It's basically recently there have been discussions online about binging versus weekly television. And part of why must-see TV becomes must-see TV is because, since it's coming out every week, you have that weekly, did you see blank?
Yeah.
And I think that is kind of going to be the purpose that like monthly floppies fill. And I think when floppies disappear, they will continue as digital floppies.
I think that's true.
And when that happens, I think the main reason it hasn't happened yet is because Amazon keeps fucking around with Comixology and won't let like good comic digital reading things be easy.
Speaking as a person who is published by Comixology, I currently have no idea what's going on over there. So but that's not an unusual experience in publishing these days.
I mean, kind of feels like Amazon's gutting it. But
I'm not going to disagree.
I mean, I might I'm still planning what I want to do with Let Me Nice. It might come back and do like, I don't know, weekly or whatever. Have a lot of scenarios in my head, and I don't want to leave off the idea of monthly, because like my problem with my comic isn't the kind of comic where like a single page can stand alone.
Same.
Mm-hmm. And I don't want a single page to stand alone.
Mine is not. This is another thing I've been thinking about. Mine is not either, but I've been doing it page by page just to sort of keep it moving. But I don't know. I think for the next thing I self-publish, I want to do it like weekly, because maybe that's not enough to stand on its own either. But it's sort of a compromise, maybe.
I put my stuff up weekly, and it seems to do all right.
That's cool.
It's less about doing all right and more like this is more like me from like the idiot artist perspective, not the maximizing things perspective. I want these 2 pages to be read together. Yeah. Regardless of how that sabotages me.
Yeah, that's kind of like one of those big problems about making independent work too, where you have to strike a balance between marketing and just a production schedule you can live with and the kind of output you want. And there are hacks that you can employ that I think we all know about, where this is what I want. If the only thing that matters to me is size of my audience, that's the only metric that I'm going to give a shit about from here on out, forever and ever. We kind of all probably have a game plan we'd be adhering to right now. And part of that game plan probably wouldn't include making sprawling long form epics on independent
My
websites.
my game plan in that instance is to die, I guess.
Then perish.
The webcomicer's dilemma is, man, I can't wait to get to this part of the story that will happen 4 years from now.
That's exactly where I am right now. And like, just to bring it back around, the comic that I'm doing right now on Pillow Fort, the one that updates extremely rarely because I am also running an entire whole ass business while trying to make a stupid little diddle webcomic. There are parts in it where that's exactly what keeps me going. I can't wait till I get to tell everybody about XYZ. And that's also the part where it's like, well, this comic kind of needs to stay on Pillow Fort, or barring that, needs to be on an independent website, because by the time I get to, the scene I'm waiting for, there's going to be a whole lot of just blood and puke and just loops of intestine everywhere and people fucking and all kinds of crazy shit. And part of sort of the commercialization and popularization of comics is the rise of platforms like, Webtoon and Tapas and whatnot, and these sort of aggregate conglomeration corporate oversight sites where there's just no room for certain kinds of stories.
And the whole shopping mallification of the internet and the culture lately, like over the past 10 years or so.
Yeah, where everybody, I mean, I'm sure we all remember when we would like get on the goddamn computer and we would go to easily 20 sites before we left, and now we go to maybe 5.
Mm-hmm.
And that matters. That has changed the way people regard the internet. And I remember years ago I laughed at my husband because he said to me totally straight face, for some people Facebook is the internet. And I'm like, that's the dumbest shit I ever heard. But he's absolutely right. For some people, when they think of the internet, they think of Facebook.
That's
incredible.
That's not terribly different. Even like in the early days of the internet, there are still a huge swath of people who had a single platform that was their internet.
It's like something awful and stuff.
Like,
yeah, and
I
there's
was
a lot
thinking more Usenet and stuff like that. Like,
and there's a lot of people now who would not at all have been on the internet back then, who now are on it, but it's just on Facebook or whatever.
Yeah.
But
none of those people were going to use the internet as it used to be anyway.
Yeah. And again, the popularity of comics is, I keep bringing this up, but it's very much like a monkey's paw, where more readers is good. You want more people out there looking to consume comics, because a proportion of that readership is going to be into you, even if it's just for every 100 people in the door, 3 stop at your table, like it's a convention. That's 3 more people than you had. Mm-hmm. But with the, the takeover, I guess you could say, of the independent webcomic by sites like Webtoon and so on. Yeah, it gives like 20-year-olds who want to start baby's first webcomic this model to follow and this trellis to cling to, and that's nice for kids who need that. And because of that, we are definitely seeing comics we wouldn't otherwise see, but it shuts as many doors as it opens, in my opinion.
Yeah, and you say for the kids that need that, but like, not to disparage them, but they all kind of need it, because it's not even on the cultural radar to do something not on that platform, I think, for a lot of people younger than us.
A lot of people don't, like, I think a lot of people don't know how to, like, have their own website anymore.
Yeah.
A lot of people, like, I think Webtoon right now is filling the internet ecosystem niche of your Comic Genesis and your Drunk Ducks and your Smack Jesus, because kids who don't want to make a website want to put their comic somewhere.
A big detriment has been, and I think people forget this, like Tumblr it wasn't meant to be, but it was a comic publishing platform for a lot of people. People had entire comic series that were on their Tumblrs, and when the big Tumblr exodus happened, that was and Twitter.
And I think that's not on Webtoon. That's on Tumblr.
Oh no, yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, as long as there is a platform that is friendly to a serialized work, people will use it. It's not that like Webtoon is the best and only option. It's just like, well, after everyone left Tumblr, which was really good for serialized comics, there's not really a lot of platforms now that are, because Twitter is terrible for serialized anything. Instagram doesn't really work the same.
Every social media is terrible for your anything serialized because it does not want you to read things in order.
Smack
and-
Jesus.
Yeah. So it just its usefulness to us doing this sort of work is just it's where everybody fucking is.
Yeah.
And like the dream to me is like you're serializing your thing on Instagram or whatever in a way that doesn't fucking work at all and looks like shit, and people can't reliably or ergonomically read through sequentially, but they see it in a way that's like tied into how they already use the internet, and that interests them enough to read it in some place where it makes more sense. I think that's the way to use this.
And as bad as Webtoon is at wanting to keep you in the Webtoon ecosystem, like, I do appreciate, I post a mirror of City Between on Webtoon, and Evan, I believe that you post Vatu on Webtoon.
Yeah.
And even though, like, our comics are not made for Webtoon, like, I post a mirror, and I do get a couple of people who are just like, Webtoon is the only place they go to find comics. But Webtoon makes it extremely easy to find an artist's Patreon, unlike other social medias.
Yeah.
It's like built in. When you fill out your profile, one of the first things it asks you is, hey, what's your Patreon?
Yeah, I like them all right. I started reserializing Vatu at a pretty frantic pace in like September of last year
to get it to catch up.
Yeah, so it's basically exactly a year, and it'll end, if I have measured it all correctly, it'll end exactly when the last page goes up on my site. But there's like there's so many people on there that just don't know really what comics are outside of that context. I don't know. There's a lot of people that have connected with it and are like just blown away by it in a way that kind of indicates to me that they're not totally aware of comics generally. Like, they're very impressed that I'm doing things like redrawing backgrounds and stuff like that. And also a lot of them, for the beginning at least, were under the impression that I was drawing it at the rate that I was posting it, which indicates just indicates a kind of disconnect from the medium.
Yeah.
But it's where a lot of these kids are.
I think that has more to do with Webtoons really pushes its original creators to just get that shit out there. Like,
yeah, I can understand why too.
Well, that's also, I think there's also less. I think one of the things Webtoons is, I can't say if like someone's like, hey, you need to go start a webcomic and it needs to be on Webtoons. I think I'd rather do the free one where you can kind of do whatever you want, because that's the easy thing. Like, it really doesn't matter if you follow their style guidelines or if you...
I think that's the only way to do it. I mean, that's the way...
Well, they have the Canvas thing where, like, you do a series with them. But then they get real specific.
There are people who are paid to make Webtoons.
Yeah, but then they get really, really on you about the formatting, how the updates need to look, that you need to divide it up a certain way, how the panels need to read. But if you're just doing, like... If you ever, like, look at most... Like, if you go through a lot of the Webtoon stuff... If you look at, like, the ones that are, it's people doing it and they just have their basically a free webcomic host through Webtoons, the style is all over the place. You have the people doing the panel by panel. You have people doing entire comic pages. I saw someone doing, like, animations. Like, I think that's another reason why people like Webtoons is because it's really easy to kind of do whatever you want. We're in a way that you can't, like, in a way that you can't on Twitter. Think about, like, if you wanted to make a comic with a GIF in it on Twitter, like, compresses and goofs everything up.
Yeah,
Instagram doesn't let you.
you probably
Spike, you could do what you wanted. They just wouldn't pay you to do it.
Yeah.
I
The
could
thing is,
upload what
they-
I want to upload onto Webtoons, and
No,
I
no,
would
no, no. Me
immediately
and
be
Spike
removed from
have
the
a
site.
problem where it's more about content. I read their content
Yeah,
guidelines. I don't
Yeah,
think
no,
I can mirror Love Me Nice.
here's the thing though, just fucking do it anyway. I mean,
Yeah,
are they gonna check? Maybe they'll kick you off. Maybe before they kick you off, you'll make like $500 in shared ad revenue. You know, fuck it.
Wait, they do shared ad revenue?
Yeah, when you get to some certain level,
Ah, okay.
I get like around 100 a month, which is like I didn't really know that was going to happen. That's pretty cool.
Okay. Then.
But I want to foreground that the way I think that the way to think about this is this is just something that's out there that is Webtoon is your enemy functionally, but it's a thing that you can use. So why not just fucking put the stuff there and like they can kick you off if they want, you know?
Well, I mean, like the comic in question, for folks who haven't looked at it, like it starts out gnarly and then it gets like somebody's head goes visually concave, like maybe 15 minutes.
No,
15 pages
you
in.
saw my horse page.
Yeah, but
No, they are very different levels.
yeah, like the
Kels
concave,
doesn't dwell on it the way Spikes does.
Well, it's cool.
Spikes is
it
like
when
a
heads-
lovingly rendered,
yeah,
destroyed head.
I'm gonna go ahead and find the page, and folks can link it. And like part of the reason it's even on Pillow Fort is Pillow Fort doesn't give a shit about what I have done.
I should clarify, I'm still gonna mirror my comic onto Webtoons. It's just I'm like kind of deep down in my heart going, for how long?
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair, but like, you know, you just have to ride the wave however you can figure out every way of getting the thing out there and just, be mercenary about it and treat the institutions as basically destructive, but fuck it, you know.
I also think more people would make websites if they just knew how, because like a lot of the people who are the types to make these really cool webtoons, webcomics, would probably love to have their own websites, and it's just something that hasn't been presented to them as doable. Because like, because when I was a kid, and we mentioned it on a previous episode, when I was a kid, like, if you wanted a website, you had to learn HTML. Like, yeah, they were free and you could just get them, but like you had to learn everything if you wanted to. It was the only way to have anything on the internet.
Amanda, I won't make you put this in the stream.
I'm
but
not
I have
going
posted-
to.
I have posted the 2 pages that maybe most closely show.
You put
what
them
I
in
am
the
talking
wrong
about.
chat, but that's fine.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Could you put them in the right chat?
No.
For me? Okay.
Yeah, this is fine.
See, I don't believe you. I'm
Here's the
sorry.
thing,
I've
I
seen
think
worse on Webtoon.
I'm saying
No,
I
just
think
do it
it's-
anyway.
Yeah, I'd do it anyway. Here's the other thing about Webtoons guidelines is, because I was very, like, when I was saying I think mine might violate it, they are very, very vague.
Yeah.
They are
there's
so
nothing
vague.
new.
And like, what are they
I
going to do
say
to you?
Spike, I say this is fine, mostly because it's in black and white.
Yeah, it being in
Oh.
black and white kind of does a lot.
Yeah, like
And-
it being in black and white is making the people who would be bothered by this not register it as graphic as it is, and that's why I'm like, this is fine.
Yeah, I
Like,
actually have a really weak stomach, and I'm not bothered by this.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is fine. You can post this on Webtoon, and no one will care.
Okay. See,
You're
this
hurting-
is
You're
Well,
hurting her
I would
feeling.
say no one would care,
Well, no,
but I
it's
don't
not
know
so
how.
much-
I don't know if it's a kind of thing where one person goes, "I'm gonna report this," and that's how it happens.
I mean, the thing is too, it's like it doesn't end here. It's like the comic kind of doesn't stop being this way, and there's
Well, I guess we'll find out what the limit is. Keep going.
that'd be kind of amusing. But it would probably. I mean, I honestly, I don't think it would last to it got
No.
to the actual fucking. I really don't think it would even make it that far because there's so much coming.
I don't know. I've
But, like,
come
look at-
around.
I
I'm
mean-
saying do it.
All of us here have been building how we do comics around like our own spaces that we have control of.
Yeah.
So like, what can they what can they take from you? They can
Yeah.
take from you
They can't
the
take my
platform
website down.
of their own, so
Yeah. It'd be pretty funny if it just sort of was on Webtoons and like no one cared, and
That would be
got
funny.
the page like 100, and like it was
Mhm.
full dicks out and like puke all over the dicks, and nobody said anything.
That would be great.
yeah, I wonder what the line is.
My
Yeah, they
feelings
don't
would
make
be
it very
hurt.
clear because I was reading
There is a like a adults only pop up you can opt into.
Oh,
yeah
I did
for
not know that.
yeah, you can have mature, but like it's real vague about like what would be too much for that, and it's like
Oh yeah,
Not
it's
all
probably
these
not.
comics are full
It's
color,
probably
huh?
not like adults only. It's probably like some discretion advised.
This series contains adult themes and situations. Is recommended for mature audiences.
Um.
Wow,
Okay.
I hate this format.
Spike, have you read Killing Stalking?
I don't know what that is.
That's a webtoon that's about a psycho murderer who is being stalked by a dude that's obsessed with him. So the stalker then gets locked in the murderer's basement, and then they fuck. And that is a webtoon.
I'm just like looking at Webtoon stuff right now, and it's like, oh right, I forgot about the format.
I mean, the format is
The
ignorable.
scroll.
Yeah.
You can ignore the format, honestly.
A lot of people.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people that I read commenting on it who found it through that platform like dramatically prefer it to like clicking through pages, which
Yeah.
kind of makes sense. I like the conceptual unit of a page, but you can still have that with the scroll and like
Yeah.
why not?
I mean,
Yeah,
you
I'm
can
not
build
sure-
that into the image itself, like just have like
Yeah.
a big margin at the bottom.
And yeah,
That's a
like
big fat margin.
I just post Old City Between comics. I do not do any editing to help their format. Like it's just this is the page.
Yeah. What's your readership like then?
Honestly don't know because I don't pay attention to it. They also they don't really tell you like readership. They tell you how many people have given you hearts.
And like how many people are following or like it or
Yeah.
whatever that is called.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness.
But
Okay. Yeah, I just found something with a violence warning, and I'm scrolling through. I'm just like, okay, I suppose
But yeah,
that's violent.
again, I do think a lot of people would use would be down to use websites, but like I can like I was thinking, oh, you could I was thinking, oh, well, what if like you promote you encourage people to get group sites together as a group and like you all share the hosting. But then I remembered like the dumb drama that would break out between people as teenagers, and I'm like, oh
God,
yeah,
no.
that's gonna
God,
be
no.
it's like, yeah, it sounds like it would solve some problems. Like, yeah, we'll get $60 a year hosting and we'll all split it and we'll all put our webcomics on it, us 20-year-olds. And I'm like,
I
oh,
cannot think of anything
it
that would be
sounds good
worse.
on
Yeah.
paper, but then I'm like, oh, that's gonna break bad once someone like, I don't know,
Yeah.
Also,
smooches
it's
someone
like-
else's boyfriend.
All it would take is a group of 6 to 10 friends going in Dutch on some hosting for one of them to get significantly more popular than the other, and then everything will immediately explode in blood.
I think it would still be worth doing if
Oh,
like
it'd be
that was
worth it.
if that was where the culture of the internet was. But if you were to do that now, it would be like trying to just cling to some desperate nostalgic dream. I think it's still good to do because I hate
I
what
do
the
think
internet
it's
is.
viable. I
I
think
it probably is.
the thing that we need, the thing that would make it viable is a way to ensure content discovery. That's the thing that
Yeah, discoverability is the one thing that is in like the definite pro column for me for webtoons. Like, there's definitely people who are there going, "I am here to read comics. Show me your comics."
Yeah. And
And
that's what
not something you get many other places.
and discoverability means just the noise is constantly made about all the material on this web ring or whatever on every social media.
it's not even about noise. It's also about being able to find something when you want to find it. It's being able to say, I would like a webcomic about, I don't know, gay furries smooching. But it's not porn. It's just smooching. And like being able to actually get that thing you want.
Yeah.
There are comments.
I want
What
to
comment, Spike?
There are comments on Webtoon. Like there are comments on the pages.
Oh, there are comments. There are
I'm
comments.
at
I have found that charming because they're all
Really?
they're all so much younger and than me and
You're so
and
full
don't
of hope, and it
Yeah.
warms my jaded heart.
so full of hope and like ignorance about what I'm trying to do.
Casey,
Yeah.
I started out as a janitor.
But like in the big picture, what is to be done? You know, like
Honestly, yeah.
like the we can't go back. Like
No.
you
That's
can't
important.
you can make maybe impressive and productive efforts to sort of build new independent like social networks or like web rings or that sort of thing, but the way that the internet works now is people are on platforms and people find independent comics through the designated popular platform, and an enormous amount of fucking people are there.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah.
like, how do you?
I mean,
I don't know,
arguably,
the thing-
I'd say arguably it's a bigger population of comic readers than maybe were webcomic readers previously.
I
Oh,
would
for
believe.
sure.
I would
Doubtlessly.
believe that absolutely.
Doubtlessly.
Fucking millions of people are subscribed to some of these things.
Yeah, the thing that
Incredible.
I always talk about Scholastic basically fumbling the ball, and from the larger picture in publishing, large publishing companies fumbling the ball, is we are currently living in an age where there are millions of children from elementary school and middle school who had Scholastic march into their classroom, set up a book stall, and be like, buy it, it's good for you. And of course the parents are like, oh well, if it's good for them, and just hand their $40 to go buy comic books. And so these 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds are out there reading Amulet and Smile and Drama and Bone, and they are developing a taste for comics from a really young age, which the comics industry before the late 90s and forward was absolutely catastrophically failing to do decade on decade on decade, which is why the industry was shrinking. But now it's growing, and it's not just growing, it's growing explosively. But at the end of the middle end grade school sort of comics machine, these kids are just being spit out onto the street, and there's kind of nothing for them there. Off to one side, there's really small publishers like myself who are occasionally putting out something strange and weird that doesn't get good dissemination because bookstores don't have space for it, and bookstores basically follow the whims of the larger publishers, and the larger publishers have yet to make a push for comics older than YA the same way they've made a push for comics YA and under. And so what's filling the hole for them is Webtoon and sites like that. These are kids who think of themselves as, I'm too old for Bone, now what do I read? And they're reading things like Seven Seas, and they're reading stuff from Tokyo Pop, and they're reading Webtoon. That's where all these kids are going.
And there's
Sorry. Oh, go for it.
Sorry. Okay. I do think that there's this probably maybe just in the English speaking world, there's this like strong association with drawings with like childhood, and how like, you look at like a mainstream adult media that involves drawings for adults, and it's like Family Guy or stuff that looks like shit, and where it's kind of like the joke is that it's a drawing. Like, isn't it funny that this is a drawing and you're an adult watching this show?
Yeah.
I think about that a lot, but I feel like culturally we haven't wrapped our head around the idea of, in a broad sense, maybe we haven't wrapped our head around the idea that like visual literacy is something that can be as rich and complicated as any other type of literacy, and that can proceed with you into adulthood, and that like comics are a medium that can work with that. And the comics for like young adult and middle grade readers are made by adults thinking hard about this stuff and taking advantage of all that stuff. But we just have this like culture, it seems like, that seems to understand drawings as like something that is kid stuff. Or if you like look at like animation for kids in the Anglosphere, and how visually rich and inventive it's allowed to be,
Yeah.
it's depressing, because like I'm a fucking adult and I resonate with like drawings, and I think about them, and I think that they can communicate an awful lot, and
Yeah, I definitely think it'll change as long as all these publishers don't just drop the ball and be like, okay, all we have to do is keep making stuff for middle graders. That's right. That's it. That's all we got to do, right? It's like, oh, but they'll
And
grow up
honestly,
someday.
what's really frustrating is everyone I talk to who's in major publishing, and I talk about like to them about this issue. They're like, yeah, but our bosses don't want to push growth into the older market. They want to push growth into the younger market.
Yeah,
So
because they're risk averse.
We're done with middle grade. We're gonna now make early readers comics.
Why do you think that is?
That's because, like you were saying, that it's associated with children, and it's also kids do read more than adults.
Yeah, they really do.
Kids are encouraged to read.
Statistically, yeah, kids read more than adults.
Also,
they're encouraged to read. They have free time to read.
Kids
they're
get
not exhausted
gifts
from
at books as gifts a lot.
And it's worth noting too, and coming at this again from like the publisher angle.
I can't think of the last time someone bought me a comic book.
Yeah, people, especially like librarians, are kind of an incredibly big part of Iron Circus's sort of marketing strategy. Just a weekend or two ago, I sent Andrea Purcell, who is the assistant editor and does a lot of admin over at Iron Circus, and also Ryan Estrada to the American Library Association conference so they could talk with a bunch of librarians, because librarians super duper matter, because librarians want people to come to the library. And there has been a nitro injection into library just membership, attendance, use, with the introduction of significant collections of manga and comics, especially considering like how the fuck long is Naruto? I don't even know. Like 50 volumes, 60 volumes, something like that. How the fuck long is One Piece? How the fuck long is Dragon Ball? They're big.
One Piece is so long I stopped reading it because I couldn't keep buying shelves. I was going broke.
Exactly. And like there's always going to be that parent who is happy their kid has a book they love, and they're going to look on Amazon and be like, 60 fucking volumes, fuck this, you're getting a library card. You know, and
that's how I read all of Dragon Ball. You'll notice my T-shirt.
Yes.
in my VTube avatar. I read all 43 volumes of Dragon Ball over the past year, just getting them from the library.
And manga has opened that door to pretty much all comics being in the library now. And it's actually increasingly rare. In the time that Iron Circus has been sort of working that angle, we have seen more and more resistance fall, especially from like older librarians who are all like, no, I'm a library. I want books. Comics aren't books. There are things people have no idea are going on. There are panels at library association shows going, let comics in your library. There are flyers that get handed out to the librarians about why you should allow manga and comics in your library. Did you know that, if you want kids in the library and a lifetime of library patronage, you should, have Naruto on the shelves, or you're a fucking idiot. Da, da, da. And it works. It absolutely works.
Does.
And it's why I think I've said on Twitter before that when the New York library system requests a digital arc or a physical arc of an Iron Circus book, I basically shit my pants, because I'm like, oh god, yes, because the New York library system's fucking huge. And it's like, cool, let's sell 300 books at once. Why not?
Yeah.
I really feel like I love manga, but like it's frustrating that like it really picks up the slack when it comes to, like the transitioning readers, like the middle graders growing up into YA and then older. That's where they end up, because I mean it keeps proving that it works, that the audience is there, that the money is there, and it's just the American publicists just like, I don't know, man.
Like I keep saying, what we need is a bone, but for adult readership, because again, the large companies, very slow moving and very, very risk averse. They need something. Yeah. They need a guaranteed thing. They need something. They're not going to put $1 billion towards developing adult content unless they think there's already money there.
They need a Twilight sense of comic.
We need a comic Twilight, basically.
They need the sort of grizzled prospector with his one donkey and his 3 teeth to go out to the river for them and come back 3 weeks later, doing a little heel clicking dance, carrying a gold nugget the size of a Pomeranian. And then they'll care. Then they'll
I had
build
no idea where that
Boomtown.
sentence was going.
No, it's like they don't want to do the work to find the vein,
Yeah.
but when the vein is found, they want to mine it, and that's just how large companies
Someone
work.
in the chat earlier asked, "What about Hiveworks?" And the thing with Hiveworks is they're more of a I really don't consider them a platform. They're a publisher, so I really don't include them in the talk about self-publishing because they're more, I think, a publisher. Like they publish you more than you publish yourself through them.
I was just trying to figure out what they are because I have been like aware.
Question.
Yeah.
Well,
I think Hiveworks is also trying to figure that out.
They're basically, I mean, as I understand it, they are a web comic publisher. They compensate people to make web comics so that they can put them on the internet, and that's why I consider them a publisher more than a platform, because like not anybody can have a Hiveworks comic.
And
like,
it's also,
you have to like submit to them and get picked up.
If you're picked up by them, you don't touch your website.
Yeah. They handle your ads, they handle your website, they handle, depending on the type of contract you have, they'll handle merchandise for you. They've started to do Kickstarters. They have a publishing deal with 7 Seas, where it's 7 Seas, right?
Yes, it is.
Where
we have a Hiveworks folder in our production.
Yep. Where 7 Seas will publish Hiveworks comics. It's like part of the pipeline. So that's why I don't think of them as a webcomic platform. They are a publisher. They just are a publisher that just is web first.
Interesting.
Okay.
And how do they, I mean, how are they connecting with readers? Like,
for them, it's basically, because
they have a big bar under everyone's comic that tells you that shows you new comics. They also have their big hub page where you can organize it by genre. If you're
you can go basically if you go to hiveworks.com, that will like show you every single webcomic they have. It shows you which have updated.
You can look at it via updates, or you can say like only show me the fantasy comics, or only show me the sci-fi comics, or show me comedy. Like
I am interested in this because I don't like, it seems like an enormous operation, but I never hear about it. I have no idea really what they do or how they fit into the ecosystem, and it's hard to find, like, I don't know, I was looking for like some interviews or something the other day. It's just hard to find out.
Yeah, it's always been a bit opaque to me too, but I know that's because they've changed kind of the way they do things a few times. So.
Well, they've also like
also,
kind of unique
like,
and have kind of shape shifted over time.
Yeah.
And also, I think their contracts and like what they actually do for you does like vary creator to creator. I know, like, for example, like depending on the comic, depending on the creator, depending on the agreement, now this might have changed, but there were some people who got like
sweetheart deals.
Yeah, basically sweetheart deals where like they got like a large payout a month, and some people get like what are basically like stipends of like, this is basically enough for you to like, I don't know, justify taking 3 days off your day job. You know, it varies comic to comic, and it's more like, I mean, like any publisher, I guess, is going to be like, well, we're going to give you what we're going to make back.
Interesting.
And also, they kind of have the other thing they do that is unique to them is because all of their comics are on their sites and within their network, they kind of, if I remember right, they kind of pool Google ads, and that's how they can get away with like having not safe for work comics that you normally can't get ads. Those just don't get the Google ads, but like they still benefit from being on the site because it brings readers to the comics that can get Google ads, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
I honestly carve out far too much space in my head thinking about and sort of like trying to preserve a space for,
I mean, it's a mixed bag. Like,
not safe for work comics, because part of this is tying back into the whole sort of webtoons thing and the rise of the middle grade comic thing. When
oh yeah,
on
7C's
level,
recognize their union. Yeah.
yeah, and on one level, I'm really glad that's happening. Rising tide raises all ships. The more readers of comics we have in the country where we ourselves are trying to make comics and get them read, the better off we all are. That's great. But I feel, God, this sounds so fucking, I'm so sorry. This is Ludic functionally, but I feel in a lot of ways the intensity and the personal vision of comics is perceptibly being worn down, and it's becoming unavoidably more commercialized and more staid and more regimented and more muzzled. And I get this feeling when I can feel my eyes glazing over when I go to the Webtoons front page and it like recommends a bunch of random comics to me, and I'm just like, I can't help but think about when I would read comics and I would find one comic about, Pup contemplates the inevitable heat death of the universe over here, and I would be reading the Jane's death over here, and there would be newspaper style strips over here too, but also over here there'd be like weird experimental shit, and that can kind of only survive in environments that are kind of the flags haven't been planted yet. Nobody's figured where the money comes out yet. So it's just, idiot artists wasting their time doing weird shit. And I'll occasionally have thoughts just like, I'm never going to know the joy of finding something like When I Am King again. I'm never going to find that sort of weird.
I guess I don't get that, because like that kind of stuff pop. Here's the thing, that stuff, you're not going to see that stuff on Webtoons probably. But you're still gonna see that shit pop up on Twitter occasionally.
I disagree. Like, I feel like there's always gonna be that shit out there. It's just, you might have to dig for it a little bit, but like the people who are going to Webtoons for their comics aren't interested in that. They're interested.
They'll never get a chance to find out if they are or they aren't.
Spike, I think that no, I feel you, Spike, and I think that you and I just tend to think about this stuff in like recklessly generalizing ways, if that makes sense. But I think that is kind of the trend, and it's a broader thing, like
the kind of the internet,
and the edges are being sort of sanded off of like, I don't know, underground or countercultural material, or something.
I feel that way.
I get what y'all are saying, but like, I still find some wild shit all the time, and it has a readership. I'm like, what the fuck is this? And it's like been going on for 2 years, and I just stumbled across it.
I think it's just like I think it's more an issue of there is so much more that you have to look at more comics to find the weird shit. So
and because there's so much more, that means that the stuff that isn't weird is going to get elevated far
prioritized
more.
And that really it's a blessing and a curse.
I am coming from it from the angle of someone who has kind of never really been capable of making, air quotes, mainstream style stuff, and never really wanted to be capable of that. So maybe I'm catastrophizing a little excessively, just because, I am one of the few people that read webcomics and get online expressly looking for the new When I Am King and, the Jane's death and shit. And I know most people aren't doing that.
I really think that is the trend, though. And I think you were talking about like the phase before flags are planted, when it can be sort of when it can be individual artists just experimenting. It's also like this increasing precarity. Like there's a lot, people have a lot less free time, and everybody's trying to monetize all their hobbies, and everybody's fucking broke and desperate and living in this or that collapsing empire. So like there's no, that just leaves experimental or less commercially interested work to, rich kids, I guess, who don't have anything interesting to say anyway.
Yeah, and then there's like the concept of, you know what, I want to preface what I'm about to say with, I have yet to see this happen. I am not calling anyone out. This is not me,
I'm ready to square up.
Hoping you read between the lines and find someone out. But because this is just how my brain works, because I don't trust anybody and I hate everything, one of the things that I think about sometimes is, as comics continues to gain prominence and grow in size, and again, coming at this from the publisher angle, comics is very, very far from a mature industry right now, even when we're talking about the actual, middle grade to YA readership that all the large publishers and frankly a lot of the mid publishers are laser focused on. It grew 40% in 2021. No mature industry grows 40% in a year. That's fucking insanity. And it feels a lot like the industry is catching up after decades of stagnation. And that's kind of where we are right now. We are on the bullet train. It's not sustainable, but it's going to keep going for a few more years until it lands a place that finally makes sense. But as more money comes into comics and more attention comes into comics, and I say this through gritted teeth, the connection between comics and like the Hollywood pipeline, in my opinion, galvanizes and becomes stronger and more direct. I can't wait until we start seeing the astroturfing. And again, not talking about any specific comic whatsoever right now. But if you are at all sort of aware of your surroundings when it comes to music on the internet, you might be aware of the obsession certain people have with, and I quote, industry plants. And what industry, when someone who's like a music nerd just starts typing like plant, 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 or whatever in someone's TikTok comments, what they are saying is, here is a musician that is being cultivated actively by a big label that they are trying to pretend is a grassroots musician. Like a good example would be, there's a vocalist named Lorde who has had some sort of connection to really large major music labels since she was 13.
That obscure artist no one's heard of, Lorde.
Yeah, but she was marketed as a grassroots artist that they discovered on social media, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And there was a band a while back that people just turned on like fucking feral dogs called Tramp Stamp.
Yeah.
Where they showed up there, these women with color-coded dyed hair, and they talked about how they met at a punk show and now they're singing songs about tampons. And people were all like, we have ferreted you out. Here's all your studio musician creds. Your plants are just a bunch of fucking plants. And you'll see people accuse Billie Eilish of being a plant, and just all kinds of stuff like that. Just people who are insincerely...
That already happens in comics, both ways. Yeah. But that already happens.
I'm not currently aware of a webcomic where someone's all like, fuck you, you're fake, you're being paid for by Warner Brothers.
You don't remember... You don't remember what was... Kel, back me up here. Remember the fucking all popular webcomics are being like supported by New England money or something?
Webcomics are old
that
New
is
England
one
money
insane man.
Yeah, but I'm
sorry.
just saying that that was one insane person. But I'm just
I didn't
saying,
hear what it.
Okay,
I didn't hear what it is.
Oh, Evan, this is an old story.
Someone thought that they basically said all the popular webcomics.
This is like back in like 2011-ish, I think, right?
Yeah,
I think I did hear
all
this.
All popular webcomics are made by people from old money New England families, and that's why Topatico is in Western Massachusetts.
I think I did hear some of. Oh my god, I'm very old.
No, this isn't the same thing, because that person was contending with the fact that their own webcomic was not popular, and they were looking for a reason.
I know.
They could
I'm just
not
saying,
make a living off of their webcomic. It's not the same.
They were the most notable person, but they were not the only person. And I have actually seen. Maybe this is because I actually read more webcomics on like Webtoons and other platforms than maybe you do. I have actually seen drama where someone finds out that a webcomic artist like works in animation, like is a works at Pixar, and people have like tried to trash their cred, like, oh well, of course their webcomics good. They have Pixar money. They can just get away with drawing whatever and blah blah blah. They're not original and I've seen that go down all the time everywhere.
That is a child's opinion.
It is a child's opinion, but I'm saying
again that is not exactly parallel to what I'm talking about.
I guess I don't know what you're talking about.
What I'm talking about is something that is from a marketing angle, where basically, let's say, I don't know, fucking Netflix decides that one of their in-house storyboarders, has a really fun sketchbook, and they go, okay, we want to run this up the flagpole and see if anybody salutes. We're going to talk to our friends at Webtoon, and they're going to feature you.
Oh, you're talking about the actual planting happening.
Yeah, that's a plant. Yeah.
I thought you were talking about people being accused of plants.
No,
regardless.
astroturfing creators to make it look like they have grassroots support, when in actuality, they are a creature manufactured by the industry. That's what a plant is.
And you're talking about this. Yeah. You're talking about this as like some hypothetical future dystopian possibility.
I guess I don't give a shit.
5 years out from that, I
guess I don't give a shit as long as their comic's good.
Yeah, I mean, that's one way of looking at it. But what I
recognize I'm kind of a dumbass, but like,
no, that's one way of looking at it. But the way I am looking at it from is, I picture it more in terms of the system getting its final triumph, because once again,
yeah, I know saying Pixar money is extremely funny. Yes,
like innovation and fresh ideas are once again being pushed out the door in favor of ideas that large corporations control from the get-go. Like, the reason we get endless Spider-Man movies and endless Superman movies and endless fucking remakes of old Disney films is not because anyone's clamoring and begging on their scabby knees for Lion King but CGI or some shit, or origin story for Spider-Man number 18. It's because those are the ideas they don't have to pay for. They already own them. And the idea that once again they have figured out a way to not engage with actual creativity and actual innovation, but farm something in their own backyard that they own outright. And
I thought that was already happening in comics.
They will all, well, yeah, it is obviously with the superhero shit, but I'm talking about like Netflix and shit. Like, not every Marvel owns the Disney universe, and despite their best efforts, they're like that's the only sort of stable kind of situation that's going on. And
well, strike that. Disney owns the Marvel universe.
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
Strike that. Reverse it.
Yeah, you know what I mean. But yeah, I am picturing a future where the complete just muzzling and defanging of anything interesting happening in comics is complete.
Something's got to fucking give, though. I mean, people do hate it.
Like, I think that while industry plants may happen in the future, there will always be weird comics.
Yeah.
I think that's true too, because comics are just so easy to make.
Yeah, comics are also one of those. Oh, keep talking, Kel.
Yeah, I think like a lot of like, you want to find weird comics, go to more cons, Spike.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, that's your fault.
Yeah, it's not my fault that you don't want to go where the weird comics are.
No, I don't want to.
No, but you're talking at cross purposes though, because it's not about the weird comics existing. It's about like it's about like them being sort of sustainable and being like I guess where the money is. I mean,
were they ever sustainable?
Weird comics can absolutely be sustainable.
I Am King was sustainable. Like,
well, I Am King was a finite project. It wasn't like
No, I mean, I'm making a living doing something that is pretty esoteric by the standards of the medium right now.
Yeah,
and I don't know. I think it's a good metric of like how the stuff fits in pop culture. If you look at like. If people can make a living doing weird esoteric work, or if people making comics to make a living have to do something that's totally beholden to whatever webtoon is pitching them or whatever. And obviously, if you're doing something, if you're doing, you know, commercial artwork, if you're doing comics, then you're compromising in all sorts of ways, and you're not like a creatively pure creature.
Mhm.
But I don't know. Sometimes I think there's more room for weird and
Yeah.
idiosyncratic and personal work than other times.
Yeah, I agree. And I maybe I'm preemptive about it, but I foresee a future where once the corporations, and I know how paranoid and like goofy that sounds, but like once the corporations establish that sort of midline popular mediocrity level of webcomics, where
Mhm.
it's a they shine the spotlight on comics with maximum commercial capabilities, with the least, challenging elements. And that is what they put on the pedestal, and inevitably that's what draws the most attention, and that's what influences the most future work. I'm going to be really fucking sad when the midline drops a couple more rungs on the ladder, and like there is no money to be made by doing anything different once you start getting up to Warner Brothers, Disney, Paramount levels. There's no
I,
money to be made there by doing something that might
I,
off put
I guess my thing is I can't
0.8% of the
imagine
market.
webcomics getting to that point ever.
I think we
Mhm.
could live to see something like that, especially since people in the Anglosphere have been so starved for comics for the past several decades before the 21st century. And it's clear that we have hit a rich vein of potential comic readerships. Again, no mature industry grows 40% in a year.
Yeah, and like the millions and millions of people subscribe to these top things on Webtoon.
Yeah,
That is
it's
something that
enormous.
is going to percolate into the broader pop culture over the next several years in ways that we cannot predict. That's huge. I mean,
For
that
sure.
seems huge
Absolutely.
to
I
Yeah,
me.
guess
just
the
like
way I view it is so, unlike a lot of other media, web comics and comics in general is one of the only ways where fans of the thing can replicate it themselves. If you're a fan of a TV show, it's extremely hard to go make your own TV show. If you're a fan of a movie, it is extremely hard to go and make your own movie. But if you're a fan of comics and you get inspired by that, even if like you have these huge like web comics that are like run by corporations, I feel like there's still going to be little comics communities and comics that start off weird and take off because it's something that people can make themselves, and that's as
Yeah.
long as people have a like you're going to have these weird comics that pop up and get an audience and like yeah, that's why I guess I feel less doom and gloom about that stuff because unlike it, I guess it really sucks if you do want to make films and stuff, but at least for comics, comics is just one of those mediums where you don't have to invest that much to
yeah.
replicate what you love or say I like this but gosh I wish it was weirder. Okay, I'm just going to go make it but weirder.
Yeah, I understand. I understand where you're coming from there. I really do. And I'm not saying that weird comics will go extinct. Like I like pointing out, it's and like Scott McCloud, pointed out before me, making comics is really cheap and really fast and really easy, and it's getting easier all the time. I remember when
Mhm.
making stuff that you didn't have to scan, drawing directly on a tablet and just uploading it from there was sort of like the dream for people. I remember pining for a Wacom tablet. And now people can go out and get something that works just as well for like what, a couple $100,
Mhm.
maybe not even that. That people can get Procreate on their iPad or whatever, and they can just work exclusively that way. The same way I follow multiple YouTube channels where every once in a while they'll let it slip. Just so you know, I do all this on my fucking phone, and they have like 1 million subscribers, and they're just using their phone. So I think accessibility will increase because that's a normal trend, and I think that with that accessibility will become more people who are able to create. And I mean, I'm always going to think that's good. More accessibility is good. More people being able to express themselves is good. But at the same time, I I I wonder about sort of like the proportions that will come with the new blood, because again, coming at this from a publisher angle, you guys are in the submissions and pitches channel on the Slack too, and every once in a while stuff will get in there and it's like it becomes clear, oh right, a new Marvel movie dropped. Just like, okay, it's like, so this is, so it's, you can't really deny that sort of people's output is influenced by their input. We're all just processing media that we've been exposed to. And as the media that the average comic enjoyer is exposed to gets more streamlined and
I'm
unadventurous.
thinking about a Twitter conversation I had where a guy tried to argue with me about what Iron Circus is looking for. Because it was someone that I follow.
And what are they? What am I looking for? Tell me. What I have to know. I have to know.
Well, so here's the thing. Basically, what it was is a guy I follow on Twitter who's a very good writer, but he likes superheroes. And so he was just wondering, hey, where what are the publishers that are willing to publish some superheroes? So he was asking a very innocuous question, like whose submission pages should he look at? And one guy recommended Iron Circus.
No.
And because I followed the original poster, I jumped in and said, no, don't look at Iron Circus. Yeah. I basically said, it says on Iron Circus's submission page, no superheroes.
Yes.
And then
I get to do mine on a technicality.
Yeah.
And then the guy is all like, yeah, but you published something terrible, and it's no. He's Iron Circus published something terrible. That's a superhero book, and I'm like, no, that is a
that
book
is
about
not a
superhero. Yeah, I was like, that is a book about how superheroes makes the author feel. That is not a superhero book. And he's like, well, Iron Circus publishes Shadow Eyes, and I'm like, Shadow Eyes was not picked up through submissions.
No, Shadow Eyes was a rescue operation, and oh my god, I'm not even going to get into that. But
this guy just kept arguing with me about whether or not Iron Circus will publish superheroes, and I'm like, we will not publish it. Like I would like no.
I am in the submissions channel. I am looking you in the eye when I tell you.
Yeah, and I ended up like
I'm a special
DMing
case.
The guy who's
beloved baby.
I ended up DMing the guy who, like I said, he is a good writer, and I just sent him like, this guy that I'm arguing with is an idiot. I am an editor at Iron Circus. We do not want superheroes, but I would love to see any horror pitches that you have because I do like your writing. Like
there's many. Yeah, I would. Oh, there's so many things I would love to publish, but no one submits for. It's like I would love to publish more horror, especially like I don't want to pigeonhole, but like Abby Howard's like Children. What's it? I'm sorry, not Children. That's the name of the first book. Last Halloween, Volume 1, Children, excuse me. Like stuff like that. I'd love to publish more of that, but I can only publish what gets submitted. So
I am 2 days away from being done drawing this kind of horror book for Iron Circus right now. So
yes, the one
there you go, working on it.
The one we had to rename so people didn't mistake it for a superhero book.
Like I'm doing a magical girl comic, and Spike always said like she hates magical girls and.
Well, the thing is, magical girls and superheroes, I don't really consider the same thing.
I think that they go hand in hand.
They're not identical, though, especially since when you say superhero, in my opinion, when you're talking in context and you say superhero, you are picturing a very specific thing. And when you are talking magical girl, you are picturing another very specific thing. And while they share features, a magical girl fan is not particularly likely to be all like, Superman is the exact same thing as Sailor Moon.
I didn't say they're the same thing. I'm just saying they share conventions and they're very similar.
Well, yeah, I mean,
yeah, you're both right.
With Gundam, it's still not, sharing conventions isn't unusual.
Anyway, Evan, let's talk about Dragon Ball Z.
I don't know anything about Dragon Ball Z except that the guy who made it was already hot shit when he made it, and I think a lot of people don't realize that.
Yeah, he really was. I haven't read the what's it called, the Arale thing. What's the thing Dr. before? Dr. Slump.
Yeah. And Arale,
he did a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, folks didn't know. Akira Toriyama, before he did Dragon Ball Z, he did a strip called Dr. Slump, and it featured a little robot girl whose name I could never
Arale, right?
Arale,
Yeah, I think so.
who's this little bespectacled purple-haired girl in a baseball cap who has some frankly very Goku-like features.
I like that. That's because of Evan's avatar. It looks like it's
Yeah.
going.
Yeah, but yeah, he already had, I believe, what the children would refer to as "fuck you money" before he even started Dragon Ball Z, which is interesting.
But
My brother has
he's now
so many
the-
Dragon Ball Z figures. I should share the pictures soon.
until recently, he was the comic. Dragon Ball was the comic that sold the most copies worldwide.
I believe One Piece took over, right?
Yes, One Piece has surpassed him recently. Like,
Man, it's just not as good. I'm sorry to say.
I cannot read One Piece because I'm
Slump.
incredibly turned off by the art style. I'm sorry.
I'm not. It
I tried
doesn't.
to read it. Yeah.
It doesn't. I tried it right after Dragon Ball on somebody's recommendation because that's the natural recommendation, and like Dragon Ball is obviously very sort of quickly and loosely drawn, but it's so much more confident, and, like technically capable, and the choreography is just fucking beautiful.
It's also, if you want the person who became a mega hit with their first thing, that is the guy who made One Piece.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Yeah, and that is why
makes
he is
sense.
not as technically competent as the Akira Toriyama, because it's his first comic, like, or it's like his second comic.
See, in terms of like visuals, I prefer One Piece to Dragon Ball.
But do you know, Amanda? Do you know what I mean though? That like the communication is much tighter. The motion is sort of tighter. I mean,
yes, I just don't like the art in Dragon Ball as much as I like the art.
I can understand that, and
One
there is
Piece.
something a lot more like humanist and friendly about some of
Yeah.
One Piece.
For example, I've kind of fallen off the My Hero Academia wagon because I really liked how it looked at first, and like as time has gone on, it's gotten tighter and more, I guess, competent and better draftsmanship, and the characters have much better anatomy, and it's very, very well made, and I do not like it as much.
That's tricky.
I tried to read One Piece and I couldn't get into it because I just felt like I wasn't really getting that much from the characters. And I read a lot of One Piece because everyone told me the point of like, this is when it gets good, and of course it gets good at like volume 20.
Yeah.
Like, so I've read a substantial amount of One Piece, and I realized like I just wasn't feeling the characters, and that was more what was losing me.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it from the start. Again, like I said earlier, the entire reason I stopped reading it is because and I might pick it up again now that I have the various Shonen Jump apps and stuff, but I had to stop because it's like I can't keep buying bookshelves.
My big thing is I have to enjoy looking at the faces you draw. And
exactly.
I really, this is no shade. This is not a judgment of the creator in any way. It's just I can't stand the way he draws faces. I can't look at those faces. I can't.
The One Piece guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little. It gets a little goofy.
I like Goofy though, but I like Goofy.
No, I don't know. That's not exactly what I mean. I don't know. It gets goofy in a way that's like too uncanny for me sometimes.
And the thing is, I'm not even one of these people that has this like 10-foot boner where, it has to be anatomically perfect. Like Grappler Baki is some of the most insane bullshit you'll ever see. But I really like that comic. It's super fucked up and hideous, but it's incredibly readable. And just seriously, anyone here just Google Grappler Baki manga and you'll see what I mean.
And I think Beastars, which is drawn by that guy's daughter.
I love how that looks.
Oh, it looks real
bad.
It looks good, Spike. I'll fight you.
It looks real bad.
It looks
Spike's
good.
Wrong. Spike's just wrong about this.
No, it's real bad.
My favorite shonen is Yu Yu Hakusho. That's always going to be my favorite. I really like the characters. I like the way that the author draws. I like bits of Hunter x Hunter, but I don't like the characters as much as the Yu Yu Hakusho characters. But Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry
I'm
to be
quickly
stars.
doing a Photoshop to explain what I mean when I talk about the My Hero Academia thing. So that's why I'm quiet. So y'all keep talking.
Yeah,
Look, what?
Evan, you should
Hey,
read Yu Hakusho if you haven't.
one of the things that I've been meaning to read
okay.
is what's that one that everyone fucking loves that has Ainu protagonists?
Oh,
Oh, that's
Gintama?
Golden
Golden.
Kamui.
Yeah,
Golden
Golden
Kamuy, yeah.
Yeah.
Kamui.
Golden
Kamui.
Kamuy.
Blah, blah,
Yeah,
blah, blah.
everyone's all like, "Oh, you got to read it. You got to read it," especially since you're into sort of gross trash boys. I'm like, okay. I mean, it's on the list, but I have no time to do anything.
It
Yeah.
looks pretty good. I got the first one. I read the first chunk of it from the library, but didn't stick with it. It looks pretty good.
Yeah.
Well, because we're on the subject, I've been thinking a lot about like uh, serialization formats. I guess we kind of talked about. I don't
Yeah,
know. Can I walk through this idea that
go
I've
for
been
it.
developing?
Yeah.
I'm
I've,
always interested in your ideas.
I've nobody really else around me to talk about this shit in high definition.
Yeah.
Okay, so Spike, you brought up Scott McCloud a while ago. Was he the person who came up with the infinite canvas idea,
I
or
think
I
who?
he's
think
the
he
one who
made the
named it.
name,
Yeah.
but
Right. The
yeah.
name.
Yeah.
Do you remember that? Like the idea that the internet would open up this like all these physical dimensions and like these huge new page shapes or whatever, and not and the end of the constraint of the repeating identical page, and that just totally didn't happen. And that's one of the things that people point to, Scott McCloud, because he was like a futurist about these stuff. He would make these specific these specific predictions that I think were like brilliant, but often didn't emerge exactly the way that he said.
Yeah.
So that ended up being this this thing that people were like,
Haha, you were wrong.
yeah, this didn't really happen except for these few couple of gimmicky things. But in a way, didn't it though? I think that on another axis, the internet has provided a type of publishing comics that did not exist before. The graphic novel, or like the one big contiguous comic book, is something that really did not happen that much throughout the history of printed comics. Like the whole front to back cohesive like graphic novel. You look at like a lot of early graphic novels were monthly serialized things repackaged as a trade paperback and sold as a novel, with this sort of like implicit embarrassment that like this was initially published monthly and now you're supposed to dignify it by understanding it as this packaged ahistorical thing,
Uh-huh.
But I think that when you're publishing outside of the concern of having to like make money by serializing it in print pamphlets, you are given this space to do things like what literally all of us here have done, like these big rambling ongoing things that are far, far less concerned with like the dynamics of eventual print publication. And it presents this very different image of like what comics can be, and I think kind of helps to invent our sense of what the modern graphic novel is.
Uh-huh.
That's the beginning of the idea. I'm trying to nail it down a little more, and I've been thinking a lot about like different, because like manga is traditionally like chunks every 2 weeks, and that lends a certain rhythm to it, and there has to be a way of like reading a longer piece while still being aware of its history as a serialized item without being like embarrassed of that history, like seeing both of these things at once.
Yeah, I think a lot too about the compromises I've made putting stuff online, because I'm also very aware, and like the stuff I keep mentioning, like Patrick Farley's stuff and the stuff of creators that I quite frankly I no longer remember their names because they're not that active anymore. Like again, Drew Wing's Pup Contemplates the Heat Death of the Universe is probably
Yeah.
the most searchable one that people can go look at right now. And I think about that, and I think about the infinite canvas that employed, and how fascinating and interesting that was to read. And it makes me regard the compromises in my own work because of el problema es capitalismo. I always need to be thinking about the future of the work that I produce and how this work needs to be inevitably monetized. And that has been the primary the primary motivator for me to stick to that sort of page
Yeah.
by format, no matter how fucked up and compromising and unnecessary it may be for whatever I'm doing,
Oh,
because I have to always think this has to be in print someday so I have something to sell so I don't die in a gutter.
yeah. Me too. Obviously, uh, but like what I'm saying though is that like the mere fact that you're able to, build it and publish it in the way that you are enables it to be this big contiguous expansive project, which is like, it's this whole other way of openness, I guess. That's kind of new and beautiful. I don't know. I don't know what the train of thought here is exactly. I'm just trying to like wrap my head around the the tradition of the medium as this thing that's inherently about like deeply about serialization and deeply about like working on one long project front to back alone in a way that's very different from like other narrative media.
Yeah.
I don't know. And I love it. It's beautiful and inspiring to me to think about that because I want to like incorporate that into my approach to the thing better as opposed to just trying to do the novel thing, like trying to force. This is, I think, my ideal that I was going for with Vatu was like kind of trying to force comics to do the novel thing, which is the premise that all these publishers trying to get into YA graphic novels are doing, where they're trying to make comics into these extremely cohesive, self-contained, easily explained and pitchable things in the way that novels tend to be, even though the medium is totally different and the dynamics of creating it are
So the thing
totally different.
on this topic,
Kind of
Evan,
rambling.
like the thing that I kind of like aim for, with my writing now, at least with the city between, is I do like it when like chunks are self-contained, but they like can build off of each other.
Mm-hmm.
So like City Between, I am aiming for each story to be more or less self-contained, but is like um the uh it's basically I want it to be sort of like they're building off each other and they're kind of in conversation with each other, but they're still like cohesive on their own, even though they are also part of a bigger thing. So
Sorry, you mean these separate stories being
yeah,
serialized separately?
yeah.
Yeah.
So I think like that is why I think it also comes from partly like I didn't read a lot as a kid. I'm dyslexic. I'm a very slow reader. So most of the storytelling that I consumed growing up and was interested in was TV, but before TV became like the season is one long story.
Yeah.
So
Which is the same process of sort of embarrassment almost, right? Like this idea that the ideal story is like a big cohesive thing, like a novel. It feels
yeah,
like the
and
same thing I'm talking about.
yeah, and so that's and I feel like TV went more for serialization, less out of embarrassment. I mean, went into the big ongoing story, less out of embarrassment and more like because streaming and binging became a thing.
Hmm.
They're like, well, we can tell one story that's just longer and we don't have to assume
Man, I got
someone might
no
not
idea
have
what y'all are
seen
talking about right now.
it.
We are talking about form.
No, I get that. I don't have a point of reference for the things. Like I didn't.
Oh.
Ignore me. Ignore me.
Okay, so example, Amanda, the TV that I'm talking about where there is an overarching thing, but the pieces on their own are more or less self-contained. That would be something like Buffy or X-Files, where there is
Right.
an overall arc, And so TV has now a lot of TV has transitioned into a big ongoing story. Like Breaking Bad is, you have to see episode 2 after episode 1, like, and you
Okay.
can't skip any episodes or you will miss what's going on. And TV sort of moved in that direction, I think, less out of being embarrassed and more out of, oh, people are watching this all at once, so let's just write it as one big thing.
Highland.
Um, uh, so I think like I sort of really respond to the overall pieces are self-contained, but they do come together to something that's also cohesive in its own thing, and I really like that sort of structure.
I guess I
Yeah.
like all of it. I don't
All of
think
what?
I think I like both pretty equally.
Yeah, I don't. There's no need to like one more than like, different stories can work different ways. But I think it's instructive to look at like where the craft is in each
Right.
approach, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
I've always had a really business-like approach to that sort of aspect. Like the serialization of the comic to me always sort of felt like a necessary evil. Like
mhm.
I that it was something I couldn't escape if I wanted to tell the kind of story I wanted to tell and also get people to read it. I always envied people who had both speed and patience on their side because the comic that I'm putting right now on Pillow Fort when I have the time. Initially, I started out with the idea that I would just develop a 50-page backlog before I showed anybody anything. And that way I could upload a page a day for, a little under a couple of months and I could sort of grab people as quickly as possible because if I make them think about it and this is one of those things that, marketing old wives tales, if you make somebody think about something every day for 50 days, then you have a permanent spot cleared out in their brain. And I didn't manage because I just don't have the patience. I think I got maybe 20 pages in and I started uploading weekly and eventually ran out of my buffer. And I'm back to doing, what I've always done, which is I get a page up when I have time. I have less time these days, so I'm getting less pages up. And I know that's ultimately detrimental to anything I want to do to this comic. But
But I think
what keeps me going
like
though is the knowledge that if I'm persistent, whether it takes me 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, eventually it'll be done and it'll be read as it's meant to be read, which is a whole contiguous story.
right, but
Mm.
Spike, I think that there is a difference between you're still intending yours to all be read at once.
Yeah.
And whereas if I think of like serialization, like I was explaining with the piece is cohesive on its own, and it still leads to a bigger thing. Like I think that would be the webcomic equivalent would be something like questionable content because all those pages are their own like punchline joke,
Mm-hmm.
but they are building to something bigger. Um, and
The pages can stand
I think it's
alone.
Yeah.
it's a unique skill that like I think it's harder than people think it is.
Yeah. It's
I
always been my kryptonite. Nothing. I remember this is some ancient ass history shit, but for a while there was an aggregator whose biggest sin as far as the comics community at the time was concerned was they didn't ask permission. But there was an aggregator that was up for a hot second called Is It Funny? And what they would do is they would just take your RSS feed and feed it through their site. And everybody would go there in theory. I don't think many people went at all, and they just said there's a button that you could click. It's like, is today's episode of webcomic name here funny? And it's obvious they had no discernment whatsoever because Templar, my old webcomic, was up there, and Templar is not meant to be funny. So
I
the
mean,
only
there are
reason
parts that are meant to be funny, but yeah, I understand your point.
yeah, it's a long format alternate history, dramedy comic, but it's not a gag strip. And I remember I went there and I was just viscerally offended that, it's clearly not all. It was like the thing that I fucking hate more than anything it was clearly put up by someone who doesn't actually give a shit about comics in general. They were just trying to figure out, if I squeeze it here, will it shit $1 out for me? And I sent a really unproductive email, but I got my comic removed from isitfunny.com.
On the chat is talking about like binging, and I do think binging might be on its way out because one, I think people are tired of binging, and two, I don't think it's really good for like on the monetization and promo thing. I don't think it's actually good for like long-term success of anything that's serialized, like even if it's a TV show.
It's just totally stupid in any sort of promotional capacity.
Like people only talk about it for a little while, and if you want like buzz going,
that was the thing I mentioned earlier about the must-see TV. Like becomes
and it's not even that. Even when it comes to something like fandom participation, like fandoms can really keep a show going for a long time and can really be the foundations for like more seasons because like, you know, they're like, oh my god, we need another season. The people who, and then they, you know, you've seen where like you walk up to a fandom and you're like, what are all these people excited about? Holy shit. And then you like decide to check it out just based on that. And that just doesn't exist when you like, okay, you can watch this show, this entire season in a weekend. Cause like, there's nothing to speculate. There's nothing like, so much of like speculating and imagining and daydreaming, like, oh god, what could happen next? And like that's, I mean, half the reason like 50% of fan fiction exists is just because people are like, oh my god, what's gonna happen next? I'm imagining it, I have to write it.
It's also I fucking love reading fandoms that have hiatus brain. I love it. That's when the best stuff comes out of fandom.
I disagree.
I wonder. Oh no, I don't have it fully composed in my head. Sorry, one second.
It's okay.
I'm looking at people actually dropping the names of Templar characters in the fucking chat. And I love you all. The fact that anyone remembers Sunny whatsoever is
that online anywhere at all?
No. God, no. That hideous shit is long gone. It's hideous.
No, I hate you, Spike. I'm gonna fight you in the streets. Put it up.
I'm. No, it should be. You should put it up there. Why not?
The art is literally 20 years old.
Hey, anyone in the chat? Anyone in the chat? Do you have her books? Scan them. I'll put them online.
No, I will actually rip the flesh from my own face if you do that. No, it's
you'll be fine.
I still have my 4 little paperbacks. I'm packing all my stuff. I just pack them.
Burn them.
Okay, you were saying we were talking about the dynamics between like novelesque or binge type storytelling as opposed to serial storytelling. Spike, you were saying that like this eventual dream of that unnamed comic being done and people can read it, quote, as it's intended as one big cohesive thing. That's kind of been, I mean, on some implicit level, that's been my approach to storytelling for a lot of my stuff. But then I remember like when I started Vatu, I would have this pervasive comment of people being like, well, I'll just wait until it's done and I'll buy it in print. First of all, to assume that I, a self-publisher, am going to be able to print, you know, fucking 1,000 who knows, you know, even now, I'm pretty confident I can get the 4th one printed, but you can't assume that shit. And I can't, like, it's inappropriate for me to criticize how anybody chooses to read or not read my comics, but like, it'll be fucking years, you know, and in the meantime, while I'm doing it, it's being serialized, and people, to whatever extent they do, are going to like talk about it. It's going to be like an active thing in the culture of the internet.
KC will host them on eHentai. It'll be fine.
So I would like, you know, I don't know. I want to engage that better in future. Like, because the ideal thing to me on some level is like having the whole thing complete as like a big structure. But like, there's so much richness in serializing because of the rhythm that it provides to a thing, and also because it becomes this active part of the culture and people can engage with it as it's happening. And I want to, I don't know, I want to try to encourage that type of engagement with the next thing I do. I'm trying to think in terms of this like this like weekly update schedule and having like a little bit more of a like self-contained unit every week or something.
I've been
This feels like this feels like like the way forward or something.
I've been reading this one webcomic, and it's I don't know, it's at that level where it's still technically new, even though it's like 3 chapters deep, but like it's really like I'm really patient when it comes to like letting a story unfold. But like it's really funny watching people in the comments go nuts, like trying to decipher the plot. It's really funny.
Yeah, it's always like honestly one
it.
of the things that keeps me going on my dumb little pillow fort, comic is when somebody says something, because you know when you're making the comic, you probably have a pretty decent idea of how things are going to play out in your brain. So you're sitting there and you're drawing, and you're getting the work over with, and you're getting the page up, and you're moving on to the next one. So nothing is really fresh or new for you. But when I upload a page and someone says something like, "Oh, I didn't know this was the kind of world where there was going to be newspapers," which is like a comment, and it confirms for me in plain English, I have defied an expectation. I have done something unexpected, and it's just like, you can't sit there and like, one of the biggest problems I've had is like sort of going, well, that's not interesting. Everyone will expect that. And I have to interrogate that impulse, because it's like, no, you expect that because that's how your brain works. No one else would necessarily expect you would do it that way. Stop talking yourself down from potentially cool shit just because it's not new to you, because that is how you function.
Also, just because someone predicts something right isn't necessarily bad too. Because like I've seen so many people dread like, oh, I hope it doesn't happen the way I think it happened. Oh, it happened the way I thought it happened. No.
Yeah.
But that's still thrilling.
Also, like, just because people know where it's going does not necessarily mean the ride will be uninteresting.
Yeah, totally fair.
I remember an interview with the guys who made Avatar: The Last Airbender, and everyone fucking immediately knew that eventually Zuko was going to turn good. And they, because it's like, oh, there's he has to learn all 4 elements, and one of them is the bad guy element, and we have this like this gray bad guy, he's gonna become a good guy. So
this sulky dude trying to get his daddy happy.
Yeah, and so it's basically like they said realizing that everyone knew he was going to become good was kind of freeing, because then they could take their time with it. And now it's like the thing that everyone comments is great about Avatar: Last Airbender is Zuko slowly becoming good. Like, because there's several opportunities where he can become good and then he doesn't. So it becomes extra gratifying when he finally does, because you watched him like fumble this shit through the whole series.
I also think there's like tons of people, everyone reads for different reasons. And I know like with me and Kel, we have very different like tastes when it comes to certain fiction, where I can forgive a lot of like plot stuff and story if the ride is good. Like I prefer mood to story most of the time. So like a story being predictable or not being narratively like well put together isn't always a bummer for me if like the mood was good, if it like I really like
I kind of feel that
atmosphere more than story most of the time.
Whereas I don't care if I'm not surprised, but I want the story to be good. Like
that's fair.
I frequently, like, while I think mood stuff is interesting, if there's not a story I'm engaged with, to me, then it's all frosting and no cake.
Yeah, I want, when I am reading fiction, I just want
sometimes
characters.
Keep talking.
I say when I'm reading fiction, I just want people I can give a shit about, and there's a lot I can forgive in a story if I give a shit about the characters. I don't think that's sort of a unique perspective, but it's one of those things that I'm probably more discerning about, I think, than a lot of creators are willing to bet. I don't know. This sounds super snobby. It's just all right. A good example.
Listen, Spike, you already talked about the corporization killing
Yeah.
nerd comics, so
No.
you can snob away. Like,
I
this is a safe
know, and
space.
that's the thing too, where that's actually a pitfall I have to be aware of, where I know my tastes default to farther along the artsy bell curve than the vast majority of comics readers who, want their schoolgirl isekai, or they want their fantasy adventure, or they want their chosen one story, and that's fine, and there's nothing wrong with that, and I refuse to be a shit about that. But I also refuse to pretend that stuff interests me. So I have to tread this line. A good example, and this is maybe it's not a good example because it's not a manga, and quite frankly, I think the manga that this is derived from is super ugly. But in Beastars, Lugosi the wolf is one of my favorite characters of 2021. I think this latest season is it wildly missed the mark, but the first season was really interesting when you sort of combed your way through stuff that I suspect is being lost in translation. I literally had to watch a couple of the interactions between the characters 2 or 3 times because I'm like, there's something here I'm not getting. But when I got it, I'm like, oh, okay, now I get it. And this sort of thing he has. Okay, for folks who haven't watched Beastars, world where there are predator animals.
I like that you had to disparage the comic art again in front of me.
Yeah, no, the comic is great art, and you're just wrong.
You're very wrong.
It's just fucking ugly. I'm sorry.
No,
but
that's why it's good. It being ugly is why it's good. It's so charming.
No,
I love it.
It's bad.
Anyway, I hate you.
It's very good at conveying the emotions. It's like German expressionism.
Oh, let me get to the point though. Okay, so prey animals. Predatory animals living together in harmony, blah blah blah, but it's not harmonious. There's super tension because this whole sort of attempt to live together is fairly new, and there's this prominent academy, this boarding school where the prey animals and the predator animals go to class together in an effort to sustain a better future for the world where everybody gets along. And there's this one character named Louis that is a deer. Louis. Okay, Louis. Sorry, it's spelled Louis. Louis. It's pronounced the French.
We're gonna get you.
Who is a deer, and he is. I can't really say. Friend feels strong. He is a good acquaintance of Lugosi, who is the wolf, and there is this really fucking cool thread of resentment that runs through their relationship, because Louis has this sort of this envy of the innate power of the predator. And while he obviously doesn't want to die, the prey animals don't want to die, he cannot help but from time to time just bubble over with disgust
and horniness.
At Lugosi, who is a large wolf. And I really like the way his largeness is depicted, because it's depicted in a way that a lot of sort of teenage boys who get really big and lanky and sort of disproportionate, like Lugosi kind of gives off those vibes. He's animated very well. He has stooping posture, and he just looks like he's not done, he needs to go back in the oven for a couple hours. But Louis aggressively confronts Lugosi all the time about aren't you fucking sick of being nice all the time? Don't you want to go ape shit? Like that.
And he's mad that Lugosi does not take advantage of his strength and his power because Louis is tied up in toxic masculinity.
Exactly. And that relationship, the through line of it is just so fucking interesting, especially considering the second season, which again, admittedly, I'm not super crazy about. But seeing that culminate in the second season.
And Spike, that is why Juno needs to step on him.
Yes. I'll be honest. I've read the entire manga. I don't think it ends well. I still love it.
I'm not going to read the manga. I'm going to hope for a third season on Netflix.
The third season is going to be garbage because the third season is telling the entire second half of the manga. They're gonna fly through shit and not go and have to cut a lot of shit out.
Can I just say I really like watching Evan's avatar blink. I've been enjoying that a lot.
But
hey, I'll be right back. Sorry, I'll be right back. 1 second.
No problem. But yeah, that interpersonal
The booming
relationship,
I have to poop voice.
the Louis and Lugosi like thing that they've got going on is really, really satisfying because I perfectly understand everybody's motivations. Like everything they do makes sense in the context of that relationship, and it's complex, and it's not, oh, they hate each other, and it's not, oh, they love each other, or oh, they don't think about each other. There's a whole bunch of weird shit involving everybody's personal baggage getting tied up in sailor knots, and that's my fucking shit. I
They're
love
probably gonna cut out Louis trying to fuck his fiance and failing.
No
yeah,
spoilers,
Casey.
please?
Yeah, Casey. The manga has wrapped up. It wrapped up like what, 2 years ago?
Yeah, because she wants to go back. She realized that she likes the world building better. Then she did an interview, and basically she has all these world building ideas, and there's no reason for Lugosi to get involved in half of the stuff that she has. So she wants to go back to Beast Complex, which are basically short stories in the Beast Star world.
Yeah.
I'll say one thing that like really annoyed me, and it's like one of those, wow, that's a plot hole you could drive a Mack truck through kind of thing. Wherein, and if this gets resolved in the future,
I bet it doesn't.
Neither of y'all tell me about it. I'm not interested in hearing it from you. I want to see it in the anime.
Well,
but,
fuck you too.
But there's this whole bit where, for folks who haven't seen Beastars, the fact that there are carnivores mean that there are people who either eat meat or want to eat meat or have to fight with an urge to eat meat because that meat is, potentially their friends. And there is a whole bit about how if you eat enough meat, it basically has the same effect as smoking a shitload of meth. It seems like it gives you like meth strength and makes you go insane. Like, so you can get fucked up on meat the same way you can get fucked up on hard drugs in Beastar. And it's like
it's not a one-to-one analog. Keep that in mind.
Yeah, it's not a one-to-one analog, but it also seems to be a matter of convenience that is dropped when it's not.
Matt is here.
When it's not convenient, it's dropped, and when we need meth junkie to run screaming at somebody with their claws out, there it is again. And some people seem impervious to it, but other people, it happens in 5 seconds, and it's just one of those things where there's just not a lot of clarity, and I don't like it. And part of the reason I want there to be a third season, I'm like, yeah, you need to explain why this happened to X.
All I'm gonna say is, based on how much they gotta fit into the third season, good luck. I'm not saying it doesn't get addressed in the manga. I will not confirm or deny, but I will just say, if you're only relying on the anime, good fucking luck with that.
Yeah,
because there's a lot of shit they gotta cram into that last season.
But I like
God so much.
Suffice to say, I like fucked up, complicated relationships, and if my stupid comic,
me too,
develops the way I want it to develop, it will consist almost entirely of stupid, fucked up relationships, and I personally feel no interest in relationships. Like my whipping boy, the relationship I always shit on the hardest and the most enthusiastically is the love at first sight relationship, which I would absolutely throw out a window if I could, on a cultural level, because
that's why you want my witches.
No, I think that's the laziest bullshit on the face of the earth. I really do. The whole sort of, dude, Evan's the fucking worst. Where it's just like, oh, here I am in it's like, here I am in class. I don't even respect you enough to let you get to know me. Here's a text box explaining my vital statistics. I am 16. I am 5'4".
It sounds like you just like bad writing.
Here I am. I am the top of my class at Wet Fart, University, and we have a new student today. And here's the new student, and her name is Cutie Pie Chan. Cutie Pie Chan bows and says, "I hope you please be kind to me." And I'm in love with Cutie Pie Chan. Look at my heart eyes. Oh, look at my heart.
You know what? One of my favorite stories is?
No,
is when someone has what they think is a love at first sight moment, and then the whole story is about how they don't actually fucking know anything about the person that they are supposedly in love with.
That's beautiful, because that's real. Like the feeling, the immediate infatuation feeling that's easy to mythologize is like a real feeling.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
it's the
Like
whole
I
the whole like
really I
building it into this big regressive fucking structure.
yeah,
Yeah.
I really like the movie 500 Days of Summer, which is basically talking about how like manic pixie dream girl love at first sight is bullshit.
Yeah.
Um,
Like lust at first sight, absolutely. Love at first sight, especially when it's being legitimized by the story as like a valid and normal thing to do. It's like fuck
That's
off.
why in the comic my agent's currently trying to help me pitch around one of the big, not themes, I don't know, like I guess plot beats is basically the main character ends up in the situation she's in cuz she has like a crush on someone else, but halfway through the story she drops the crush because she basically like becomes a shipper for that crush in someone else.
Hmm.
It just it's I like the idea of like, because this is meant to be like a middle grade and an upper middle grade story, and like I'm really over the high schoolers falling in love and not being able to fall out and become friends.
Mhm.
And I'm very tired of that.
Yeah.
And even when it happens in media for that age group, it usually it's only temporary. Like you think, oh, cool, they are just gonna be friends. Like, nope, they're still gonna get to. And it's just, and that's why
think
in
that's
this
also like a couple of weeks ago I talked about really liking the manga My Love Mix Up, and Spike, you are like, is this one of those mangas where people not talking causes problems? And it's like, no, the opposite. It's them blurting out their feelings that's causing problems. But also like the entire story happens because like the dude that thinks the main character has a crush on him like is like, I don't know you well enough to uh yes or no that you asking me out. So let's hang out and be buddies for a little while, and then I'll figure out if I want to date you. Um and I think like that is something that I don't see that often of like, well, I can't say yes or no because I don't know you. So let's hang out.
Yeah.
It's
And that's, by the way, the second least favorite sort of plot of mine, that if everyone involved sat down and had a fucking 3-minute conversation, you would have no plot. That is, I like, there's no fucking excuse. I hate that shit.
It's funny that the sort of the needs of storytelling. I don't know, like there you can raise all these, and I kind of agree with you. You can raise all these issues with like how romantic relationships are depicted and how they're built into these sort of regressive
slight
structures.
echo's
And
still there.
oh yeah, I didn't turn it all the way off. The I just feel like storytelling, like it's more dramatic to do the like love at first sight, we're together forever thing kind of. It feels like it's kind of more of a challenge to build a dynamic story about like you know, a righteous breakup or like entering into a romantic relationship in a more clear-eyed and mature way or something.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't know that I haven't written terribly much about that, so I don't know, but that's the sense that I have, that we're sort of induced to build stories around
Yeah.
a kind of like hyper real or unreal type of relationship.
Yeah, I kind of suspect that a lot of this, and this is massive, massive prejudice on my part. So sorry about that preemptively, but I think a lot of this is focused, like when you see the, no experience with this person, but now you are madly in love with them, and that is treated as a normal and healthy impulse throughout the story. I think a lot of that comes from a lack of experience on the part of the writer, if it does not arise from just sheer laziness.
Oh,
Hmm.
that's the other reason why I really like the show Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, because that whole show is just about how this isn't love at first sight. This is you having mental problems.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm not going to sit here and be like, the kids play the video games and that's why they shoot the schools. Like, I'm not going to be that. But at the same time, I'm not super thrilled about the sheer volume of, manga that some folks are consuming, where you're in love with this person and you know nothing about them, and that's totally normal and fine. Is sort of like a plot point that is just glossed over, and it's just like,
Yeah, but that's in almost all media, not just manga. And
Yeah.
again, I might
Yeah.
read more manga than you, but
no, you definitely do, and that is definitely in a lot of media other than manga. It's just we're talking about manga now, and I'm picking on bad.
right,
manga.
I know. But I think that's a convention
Yeah.
that pops up in lots of genres, and it's not
And
particular.
I hate it wherever.
No,
you
that's
see it.
fair. It's just not particularly bad in manga. Like,
Yeah.
definitely in the lazier manga, but
um,
I've read quite a fair bit of very popular manga. Like, okay, like even Sword Art Online was about one of the most refreshing parts about it was about like the relationship, and it was very slow build.
Okay.
But also, the thing that I just described, where people blurting out their feelings, is what's causing the problems. I describe that type of conflict as the "ma'am, this is a Wendy's" of conflicts.
Also, if I just want to really quickly fix this podcast thing that we're doing in time really quick, the former prime minister of Japan has just been shot.
Whoa.
Yeah, Shinzo
Okay.
Abe has been shot.
Why
in
would
the
you
city
say
of
that
Nara.
now? I don't want to hear about that now.
Just
Yeah.
to fix this in time, so when I
Why,
go back and
though?
listen to it 5 years from now, I'll be like, "Oh, that's what
It's
happened."
breaking news.
Yes, it's
The
breaking news.
fucking Iron Circus comic podcast broke the news about the assassination attempt on Shinzo Abe.
Yeah, yeah. So I just wanted
Wow.
to share that. As you were.
Well, what am I supposed to do now? You just made my brain go blank. Thanks.
I ruined
To be
everything.
fair, we are at the 2-hour mark. I don't know.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
I don't mind going longer. It's more like
I don't mind going longer
Yeah.
either. I'm really enjoying myself, even though I'm trolling the shit out of
Yeah.
everyone right now.
I'm gonna
But
fight you.
so I am a big fan of people blurting out their feelings.
Sorry, that was
and
me.
That causing conflict. Because, ma'am, this is a Wendy's.
The chat's on a slight lag, so I'm seeing everybody catch up.
Yeah, one of my favorite things about and this will God. Okay, just setting the stage here. I have made a personal decision not to talk too much about what I intend for the comic I'm currently making, because I find that kills my motivation. So I'm going to be very careful about what I say here.
Me too.
But I can't sit there and do these fucking lore dumps like other people do, and I'm amazed.
I think that's bad. I've just started calling that bad world building hygiene.
That's a good way to put it, because I have so much I want to talk about, but if I talk about it, I'll lose all motivation to show you because I've already told you about it.
Mm-hmm.
But there is this thing that I really enjoy when I see characters getting to know one another, and that is assumptions being upended, and like that's going to be a big element of the comic I'm doing. I like the idea that someone going into a situation thinking that they are going to understand what's going on, and there's everything being ruinously counter to what to their expectations, and I'm super excited to get to that point, and that's literally as far as I can go.
God, I'm so fucking looking forward to being done with all the shit I'm doing right now and starting a new thing.
Yeah, I want to finish this comic. That is the big thing for me. I didn't
What's
finish-
the scale? Are you comfortable? Do you have a sense of the scale of it?
Hundreds of pages is the most.
That's
it's kind
vague.
of like, yeah, it's extremely vague. I know where I want it to go, and I know
Yeah.
how I want it to end, and that is all I can really say. I haven't. Okay, this sounds super pretentious, but there was a Picasso quote I learned
You
in my
can't
20s.
just like preface everything you say with that. You just have to embrace it. Just be pretentious
Yeah.
constantly.
But you're
Yeah,
a
but,
pretentious person. You could just roll with it. You don't need an update on your pretentiousness every
I'm not
5
gonna
minutes.
call you out on it. Don't worry.
I'm
I
sorry,
love
but
you.
I love you too, man. There's a.
If I could make our avatars hug, I would. But all I can do is bring up the gun.
But yeah,
Bring up
there's a
the
Picasso
gun.
quote. There's a Picasso quote I heard in my 20s, which is, when you start on a painting, you should have an idea, but it should be a vague idea. And that is what works for me when it comes to making comics. Like, I know the themes I want to hit in the comics I make, but I try not to sit down and do the blow by blow by blow, because I find that takes a lot of the fun out of it.
Yeah,
Shoot
that
me, Amanda.
that's the dream. And
My gun shoots hugs. Don't worry.
There's this sort of pressure put on the process by pitching a thing to a publisher, pitching a thing to a publisher, and like presenting all these presentable versions of the entire book one after another. It sort of like strips some of that away, you know, like the Island book series that I did for First Second, like, you know, they're as good as they could be, but there is a kind of like there's like an immediacy that's lost because they had to be so composed and pitched and executed upon, you know.
Yeah.
The books I did for you are different because those are so much like working through an idea front to back.
I fucking love The Harrowing of Hell so fucking much. I love that book with my heart and my fucking soul. And I'm a loudmouth shitbag atheist. I'm like the worst kind of internet atheist. And I love that fucking book, which is why every time Easter comes around, I roll out the fucking, you know, the big drum and march up and down the street like the Energizer Bunny going, you fuckers better buy this fucking book because it's so good. It's so good. And what really blows me away is not only do I like it, but every once in a while there'll be some tweet from like a literal fucking like Jesuit lay brother or some shit talking about
I've done a couple of different I've done a couple of different like interviews with you know, clergy people. There's some, I may have told you this, there's some Episcopalian sort of Christianity in the in pop culture and the media blog that interviewed me recently.
Oh, yeah, you got to send me that link so I can put it on the Iron Circus Twitter.
Oh yeah, whenever I see it that it's up, I will. But I don't know. I made it in a way. I'm not religious either, but I made it in a way that's like trying to engage with the stuff. So I guess it makes sense.
It's very like a scholarly look at Christianity, and I think that is why it is appealing to both sides of the believer table. Because I remember talking to you, Evan, about like the Gospels are not supposedly not meant to be read together, and that's more of a modern thing. That sort of like I love that sort of like theorizing stuff, and that kind of like historical angle.
It kind of relates to that novel idea. Like we have this very particular modern idea of like story as a. There's a lot of traffic. We have this very particular modern idea of the story as like this intelligible, cohesive thing. But like people writing 2,000 years ago were not as deeply and habitually literate as us, and they didn't have all of our cultural ideas about like journalistic storytelling or.
Well, it's also like the idea that they were written differently to appeal to different audiences. It really like makes some of the what
I'm live, Mom.
Made a better pound cake if you want. Okay. What gets emphasized and what doesn't, like, kind of connect more. Like, I think that's an interesting way to look at like what is focused on in each gospel compared to
another.
I mean, there's a reason you can get like you can go to colleges and study this for years.
Yeah,
and it's just totally deadening to treat it as all. I don't know, what does it even mean to treat it all as like the infallible word of God? Like it emerges out of history. Good. There's so much to learn from it, even if you believe it, whatever the fuck that means to a modern person.
I used to be an Awana, so I feel very ashamed that I don't remember the books anymore. But I remember like everyone who tries to initially study the Bible completely falls off after Genesis, because then it becomes the who begot who chapter.
Yeah, list numbers and shit. Yeah,
they just like so and so begot so and so, who begot so and so, who begot so and so for an entire like chapter.
And they all lived for 300 years or whatever. Yeah,
it's just like a spoken word genealogy. It's great.
Yeah,
but
it's not like journalism. You know, it's an oral culture. Yep. It's like a fundamentally alien culture trying to understand the world that it's in, and the way that understanding itself is like just totally alien to us now, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It's fucking fascinating to me.
Yeah, and it's like the way it prioritizes patrilineal descent. It's like, oh, I could go on for fucking hours about
Well,
like
so
fucking Abrahamic
Spike,
religions and patrilineal descent and their obsession with ensuring paternity and how that fucking runs all of their goddamn societies. But whatever.
but so uh an example of like the gospels being for different audiences is I forget which gospel does it, but there's basically one of the gospels talks about Joseph's ancestry and basically goes through his patrilineal line to connect him to King David, because that was the one that was intended for Jewish readers, and it was trying to argue that Jesus as Joseph's legal son makes Jesus legally like
Right.
the heir to being king of the Jews.
The one that Harrowing of Hell is almost entirely riffing on is Mark, which is generally thought to be the first one that was written, and it's the most it doesn't have any of those like later like religious or like spiritual or legalistic rationalizations. It's all just kind of this raw kind of politically argumentative thing.
So the thing like that like I was reading is like, so that one was written to convert pagans. And so that's why it just says Jesus is the Son of God and then does not explain further. Because if you're a pagan, Jupiter's fucking ladies all the time. So
yeah, this is a familiar concept to you.
Yes, yes. Someone being the son of a deity is not like that big a jump. But like, because it is trying to target a pagan audience who would be in the Roman Empire, that's why it is more concerned with like the injustice that the government is doing and is more political. And it's like, that's where you get all the socialist Jesus quotes.
But yeah. Oh. Okay, we have been going for over 2 hours. How do y'all feel about wrapping it up?
My mom made cake.
Yeah,
Nice.
I suppose that's a good chunk of time.
Yeah.
Let's do it again sometime.
I was about to fucking say, Evan, as always, it's been a delight and a slice and a treat. We should totally do this again sometime. It's always fun to get way up my own ass about comics with you.
You too. Nice to talk to all of y'all. I haven't talked to you in a while.
Yeah.
Kel, I saw the most recently, I guess.
Yeah. So you want to tell folks what you're working on? Yeah. You want to tell folks what you're working on and where they can find you?
Yes, Evan Dom on social mediums. I'm self-publishing a lot of stuff at rice-boy.com. Vatu is the main thing. Going to be almost a 1,300-page cohesive graphic novel, kind of a viciously anti-imperialistic fantasy adventure story, ending in September.
That's why it's great.
Please read it. Please tell people to read it. I want people to fucking read it.
You should all read it.
Yes. And I, as usual, and in perpetuity, am Spike. You can find me on Twitter at iron_Spike. The Pillow Fort comic I will not shut the fuck up about, and also refuse to update with any sort of schedule, is at pillowfort.social/ironspike, all one word. It's 30 odd pages long so far, and it is called Blacata because I can't think of a better title.
Why don't you just tell people it's in your pinned tweet?
That's a great title. What's wrong with that title?
It means literally nothing. It is a nonsense word.
That's perfectly fine.
You're doing fucking secondary world fantasy. Get used to it.
Y'all are the nicest.
No, it's a good title.
Spike, you need to make a pinned tweet that's like where people can find all this stuff.
Yeah, fair enough. You can find my publishing company, the biggest in the American Midwest, at ironcircus.com. You can also find us on Instagram at Iron Circus, all one word, and you can find Iron Circus itself on Twitter at Iron Circus Comics, spelled COMICS. X because spelling it properly will not fit. Follow that account if you would rather just have info about the publishing company and not my ramblings about bullshit that doesn't matter.
My name is Kel McDonald, and so you can find all of my comics at kelmcdonald.com. That's where you can read my webcomics, The City Between, about gay werewolves in a future city. It updates every Wednesday. I also do another comic called You Are the Chosen One about 23 kids that got the same prophecy dream telling them they're the chosen one. You can read that at my Patreon, patreon.com/kelmcdonald. I am on Twitter at Kelhound, which is spelled like Hellhound but with a K. I also stream every Tuesday, Wednesday. Do art streams at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time at twitch.tv/kelmcdonald.
I'm Amanda. My Twitter is under my name. My shit's in my pinned tweet. I hate long outros. I hate them so much.
Thank you, everybody. Please remember to subscribe to our YouTube and hit the bell so you get a notice every time we put on one of these.
Twitch.
Yeah, every time you get you get a little notice every time we start one of these things.
You might. I actually don't know how it works because YouTube is a bitch. Please
keep coming to these. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you. Okay.
Bye.
Bye everybody. Have a good week.